other faculty are having issues with it, but I'm okay with it, as we've already discussed. I'm pretty excited by it, actually. When I read this today, I actually learned a lot about the comparison. I knew there was interesting similarities between them, but the main difference, as it kind of explains, is that Plotinus feels that the right kind of music can help you become one with the universe. I'm thinking he means by that the ecstasy that you feel in the way how beautiful music is. But then when we look at Augustine, he frames it slightly differently, because instead of being one with the universe, he's talking about your soul joining with God. So it's really kind of an interesting vocabulary difference, I think, as opposed to a real significant difference. In the text de musica, or of music, that is available, it's really just a discussion about the beat, the meter in music. So it's kind of basic, really, as far as what music contains, and an awful lot of it also seems like it has to do with the tempo of a speaker. Remember, Augustine was a rhetor, and an awful lot of being a great speaker is the presentation. And so in a sense, I don't think he was singing per se, but the tempo of his speech, I bet, was very important with regard to how it captured attention of people. So there's some interesting things. I think I did make that as the quiz question for today. So I can't race ahead of my notes. So in any case, that's the quiz question for today. I don't know if you can check on ChatGPT and ask the same question and see what you get. That's kind of interesting. I wanted to read a portion of Augustine's City of God because it's so fascinating, and each of the approaches that I found this morning looked like it was going to take me forever. I could have just brought a physical book to read it, because it's really just a short paragraph. But where it will really come in handy is when we talk about Descartes later on. Because Descartes is famous for the argument that's usually just phrased cogito ergo sum. You've heard of that one? I think, therefore I am. Usually, at least you hear the joke, right? You know, Descartes sitting at the bar and he says, I don't think, and poof, he's gone. Because I think cogito means in Latin, I think, sum is I am, right? So, the interesting part of his argument is this is Descartes, René Descartes, who's considered to be the first modern, and he argues that the basis of all knowledge is knowing that I exist. And how do I get to that? By doubt. What can I doubt? I can doubt practically everything, right? In fact, he comes up with this possibility that there's an evil deceiver, and whenever I talk about that, I always talk about the movie The Matrix. Anybody's seen? Yes? No? The Matrix? A few people seen it? Where there's this world where basically everybody's totally fooled into thinking that they actually are existing in a real world, but instead they're all just in vats of jello of some sort, being used by this computer. Yes? Well, Descartes gives us that same kind of possibility that all of this is actually just in the mind of an evil deceiver that's making us think that this stuff is happening, but it's not really. But then he argues, but the deceiver can't deceive me into thinking that I exist when I don't. Because I at least must exist in order for the deceiver to deceive me. So therefore, I must exist. So for Descartes, the very basis of all of our knowledge is knowing that I exist. And then he goes on from there. The neat thing with St. Augustine, this is almost 1,000 years before Descartes, and clearly Descartes is familiar with Augustine. He was taught a lot about Augustine in his schooling by the Jesuits. But Augustine gives us this reply to the skeptics. And who are the skeptics? The skeptics would have been the ones teaching at the academy. And that could have been the one in Alexandria, where we if you remember the movie Agora, where the academy is destroyed by the Christians. But there's also the academy in Athens that was there for almost 1,000 years. And at the time of Augustine, the academy would have been led by skeptics. And the skeptics would have argued that you can't know anything, basically. And in a sense, that's very similar to a lot of arguments we hear today, that knowledge is social. You can't really know anything for sure because you can't get outside of that social network to find out what might be true outside of language, outside of our social network, etc. Well, Augustine argues that there's 3 things that we know for sure. The first thing is that I exist, because if I doubt that I exist, who is it that's doubting? It has to be me. So I know that I exist. And number 2, I know that I know. I know that I know that I exist. And I have a third thing, and that is that I love knowing that. So there's 3 things for Augustine that I know for sure. And by the way, those actually are based then on a comparison between the 3 parts of the divine. So the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And it's not like we're really like the divine, but in a similar way, we have this trinity of knowing that I know, and loving that I know. So it's a good. I like it. It's neat. It's, if you feel like looking it up, it's Augustine's City of God, Book 11, Chapter 26. And I wasn't able to pull it up easily. I would have had to page through the whole text, and it's a huge tome. So I actually wanted to start today with, besides that, I wanted to go to how to read Gothic cathedral. It's a short video.
There's nothing as lovely as the sight of a Gothic cathedral facade. So we go, oh, that's nice. And then we wander into the cathedral. But are we missing something? The Gothic facade had a set of very specific meanings to the medieval viewer, particularly if you were an educated man. Women tended not to be educated, particularly not in theology, which you'd have to understand to make sense of some of the imagery here. So what I'm going to do quickly here is to give you a whirlwind tour of the Gothic facade, explaining some of those meanings. And I'm going to focus on the French Gothic. The same rules are true for Gothic style.